One of the most controversial movies of 2022 was Alex Garland's Men. When looking at user reviews on Letterboxd, the movie has an almost perfect bell curve rating with a right down the middle average score of 2.9 out of 5. A lot of people's complaints center around how the movie is about a woman dealing with trauma caused by a man, written and directed by a man. A lot of people also think that the movie only has "men are bad" to say. While I think those criticisms are completely valid, I still had a super fun time with this film. The visuals and atmosphere are really unsettling, and Alex Garland crammed in a lot of metaphors and allegories on men as well. I think it's a movie that you can really dive into and try to interpret in your own way, which I'm going to do in this video. So let's take a look at it. Before I dive into my personal take on the film, I want to give a quick refresher on the major plot points so I can call back to them later in the video. The movie follows Harper, played by Jessie Buckley, who is in a relationship she isn't happy with. When she tells her husband James, played by Papa Esiedu, that she wants a divorce, he threatens to kill himself. This escalates to James hitting Harper, and she kicks him out of their apartment. We then see him fall to his death through their apartment window. It is ultimately unknown if he leapt to his death or if he was trying to climb down to their balcony from above. Harper is distraught from the situation, so she rents a house in the countryside to relax and get away from everything that happened to her. When she arrives, she's greeted by Jeffrey, a slightly awkward host that helps her get settled in. After unpacking, she goes for a walk through the woods. On this walk, she runs into a naked green man who stalks her all the way back to the rental. This man ends up being arrested after Harper spots him through a window. Harper then decides to go into the small nearby town where she runs into multiple men, who are all played by the same actor as Jeffrey, Rory Kinnear. Most notable is a vicar in a church that tells Harper it must be straining on her that she made her husband kill himself. All of this craziness leads to the final scene at the rental, where all of the men converge on the house and tell Harper all of the stupid things she, quote, did to them, unquote. They all then give birth to one another, and the last man born is her deceased husband. The film ends with Harper's friend pulling into the driveway while she sits on the stairs looking at a plant sprout. The biggest thing that stuck out to me when watching this movie is the color choices used throughout. The two main colors we see for the majority of this film are red and green. Pretty much every outdoor setting is one of the most vibrant green hues I've ever seen on the big screen. It feels like they turned the green color saturation to the absolute max. The red, on the other hand, isn't as vibrant, but it shows up a lot during the film's runtime. Red can be seen in pretty much every shot inside of a building, whether it be paint, ambient lighting, decor, or wallpaper. So, what do these colors mean? Well, since the film is basically exploring all of men's bad qualities, I believe the green represents nature, and the red represents nurture. Nature versus nurture has been a highly debated topic in psychology, biology, and other human study fields. The nature argument focuses on genetic, hormonal, and chemical explanations of human behavior. The nature argument is that all of our behaviors are learned through conditioning and interacting with other humans. So, it only seems right to include an approach like this in a film showcasing men's shortcomings. I now want to discuss how each is displayed separately, but come together for my personal interpretation of the film. I feel nature is the most prevalent of the two in the movie, with the dominant use of greens. Green is a color that normally represents calmness, relaxation, and harmony. This pairs nicely with how many people find going into nature soothing. It almost invites you to explore and just escape the, hint hint, man-made structures of our everyday lives. When Harper first leaves the house, we get so many beautiful shots of the countryside that are a mix of all of these things. It looks like a place that I would love to go spend a day and just hike. Harper clearly feels this way too, as she is smiling and taking in everything around her as it begins to rain. She only runs into trouble when she stumbles upon another man-made structure, the drainage tunnel. When a man appears at the end of the tunnel and starts jogging towards her, Harper is forced to make a run for it. I also want to note that this man is wearing a jacket and is not the green man who we're about to be introduced to. Upon exiting the woods, Harper walks past old buildings overgrown with trees and moss. This is where we get our first sighting of the Green Man, standing next to one of these structures in the nude. The Green Man is commonly known as an ancient being that represents the rebirth of nature every spring. He is normally depicted as a man with branches and leaves protruding from his head. This Green Man quietly follows Harper back to the house and peers at her through the window before trying to break in through the, hint hint, mail slot. I feel it's also important to note that the Green Man never utters a single word during the sequence, or the entire film for that matter, and only tries to advance on Harper, which I believe is Garland's take on pure sexual instinct. Harper then calls the police, where the Green Man is arrested. We find out later that he was released as the cops had nothing to charge him with, even though Harper tries to explain she was being stalked. The next major appearance we get from the Green Man is during the final act, where he appears in his final form with leaves and branches protruding from his skin that he inserted by cutting himself. He approaches Harper and blows a plume of dandelion seeds in her face. Throughout the film, there are a handful of moments where these seeds can be seen drifting across the shot. This is very important because, according to westcoastseeds.com, dandelions in times where pollinators are scarce are self-fertile and can produce clones or genetically identical copies of themselves. This visual choice pushes forward the well-known narrative that all men are the same. This is further reinforced as the Green Man is the first character to give birth during the climax. Since he represents the rebirth of nature, this is indicating that all future births are just rebirths and all men will remain the same. Before moving on to the nurture elements explored, I also want to mention the shot of a dead deer covered in maggots that shows up around the halfway point of the movie. All of the grass, leaves, and plants around the carcass are brown and dead. I personally took this as an indication that even though the wilderness is beautiful, there are many things that are unsettling in the wild, with one of them being death. This brown patch of the woods exhibits all of the gruesome parts of nature. I personally think the nurture elements of the movie are the easiest to pick up on, as we generally point to those in our day-to-day lives. The one that stood out to me the most is how Rory Kinnear plays every man in the small town. The common saying "chip off the old block" pairs nicely with the somewhat unsettling CG face visuals. Parents play a large role in shaping their children, so fathers passing down ignorant beliefs and making a mini version of themselves is a very common argument for nurture. I also enjoy how this take pairs extremely well with the nature-driven dandelion motif I spoke about earlier. I think it's also important to note that all men represent different age groups. The boy represents teenagers, the husband young adults, Jeffrey middle age, and the vicar elder. Having all ages present shows that men issues are prevalent in all age groups and aren't just one generation's creation. Harper's interaction with the vicar behind the church is the other major nurture point that stuck out to me. After Harper confides in the vicar about the events leading up to her husband's death, he says she must wonder why she drove him to kill himself. Now, I don't think this problem rests solely on men's shoulders in reality, as toxic relationships can be perpetuated by both sexes, but I like Garland's inclusion of it. When someone takes their own life, the first question others will ask is, why? When the said person is in a rocky relationship, the finger pointing usually starts with the spouse. As humans, it's so ingrained in our culture that partners are the first line of defense for emotional distraught. So, when things go sour, they are the first to be blamed for the issues that arise out of it. Even though we as viewers know that James brought everything that happened that day upon himself, humans know it is not natural for people to want to hurt themselves, so they require answers, which sometimes unfortunately end up being scapegoats. Fostering these unfair biases is a way humans have been hurting one another emotionally for hundreds and even thousands of years, so I think it was an interesting point to make in the film. The last nurture point I want to make is the most obvious one. It is how each man represents different stereotypes of men that exist in society today. Jeffrey is the quote-unquote nice guy, the vicar is the uncomfortable old man, we see him touch Harper, then blame her for turning him on. He also represents all bad religious cliches. The police officer represents all the men that brush off women's arguments as invalid or unnecessary. The young boy represents the ignorant youth and childish sexism. Then James represents crappy relationships and uncontrolled male rage. I do think these paper-thin stereotypes are the weakest part of the film, and what people point to the most when discussing how shallow the movie is. But I also feel with the film being titled literally Men, these types of issues need to be displayed in some capacity. There may have been a better way Garland could have presented these points, but it was alright for the most part. Now that I've presented the nature and nurture elements of the film, I want to share what my overall take on the film is. When Harper and James are having their argument through flashbacks, the lighting is a very light golden brown. While mixing black with orange is the most common way to produce brown, you can also get there another way, which is mixing red and green. I think the film is a take on how men today are a product of nature and nurture. When nature and nurture are mixed, you get James, Jeffrey, the vicar, and all the other men in the film. There is no singular thing to pinpoint why men are the way they are, and it has taken thousands of years of evolution to get to this point. That is what makes the last shot of the film very interesting to me. Harper is sitting on the steps covered in blood while holding what looks to be a dandelion sprout. This could be saying that the sprout will grow up, make a copy of itself, and the same things will continue to happen. The blood on her dress may indicate she killed her husband, who was reborn during the climax, suggesting she has moved on from that trauma. It could also mean she has moved on from her husband, and the sprout means new beginnings, but we know that those new beginnings will lead back to the same exact place she is now. This final shot is what really stuck with me and is why I decided to make this video. There is no real clear conclusion or grand statement. This whole movie is really left up to personal interpretation. Before I end the video, I want to say I would love to hear your thoughts on the movie in the comments below. I covered as much as I could, but there are still other things in this movie that didn't fully fit into my take of it. There was the men glitching on Harper's phone, the biblical allegories, Harper's friend being pregnant, the church's lighting, and the carvings of Sheila Nagigs that are shown next to the green men. If you have any ideas on what these elements mean, please let me know, as I know there are probably many other ways to interpret this film. Even though I don't think Men is groundbreaking or even an amazing film, I still had a really fun time with it. Jessie Buckley and Rory Kinnear give great performances, and Alex Garland crafted a really unique horror experience. To take an idea that is surface level as Men and blend in a multitude of themes and allegories is something I admire, mostly because I love overanalyzing the movies I watch. Men also has a very unsettling atmosphere, paired with one of the most batshit crazy endings I experienced in 2022. I understand why people dislike this movie, but Men will always be one of my guilty pleasure favorites. I want to thank you for checking out my review of Men. What are your thoughts on the film? What are some allegories you think may be involved in the film? Let me know in the comments down below, and while you're down there, please drop a like and subscribe to the channel. It all goes a long way in helping me out. Thank you, and have a good one, everybody.